Greetings, and welcome back to our Standing Watch program. Now this program will be a little bit longer than normal, but I hope you will have the patience to listen until the very end of it, because I will make a very important announcement at the end of this presentation. Many of you have heard terms like the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse, the Great Tribulation, the heavenly signs, the day of the Lord, the woman riding the beast, the Antichrist, the false prophet, the mark of the beast, 666, and many other expressions. Now many of those have been taken directly out of the book of Revelation, the last book in the Bible, a book which is of extreme importance for us today because it is actually a prophecy for our times. Now many people do not understand the book of Revelation. They have no clue as to what those figures and symbols mean, and those who try to explain it have used their own human reasoning to come to conclusions. But when they do that, they have inadvertently failed. Because you see, the Bible is like a puzzle, and you have to take all the scriptures together, and they only fit together in one way. And if you are trying to put a puzzle together and you end up with some pieces at the end which don't fit, then you know you did something wrong with the puzzle. And the same is true when it comes to biblical understanding. If you have come to a certain concept, but you find scriptures which just don't fit into that concept, then there's something wrong with that concept. And so you need keys to understand and to unlock the mystery of the book of Revelation. And one of those all-important keys is the fact that the Bible interprets the Bible. And you got to go to other scriptures in order to find out what particular passages may mean. So when it comes to the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse, and of course you will recall, there are four riders riding horses, a white horse and a red horse and a black horse and a pale horse. What do those horsemen mean? Now some have tried to explain that the first rider, the white horse, signifies the return of Jesus Christ. Now this is totally false, because Christ is not going to return until much, much later in the book of Revelation. But you see, Jesus Christ gives us the understanding as to what those four horsemen of the apocalypse mean. And he does it, for instance, in the Sermon on the Mount, which is recorded in the book of Matthew in the 24th chapter. Because there the disciples asked him, "Tell us, what is the sign of your return, of your coming?" And the very first thing he mentioned was, make sure that no one deceives you. Because he said, many will come in my name, saying, I am the Christ. They will admit that Jesus Christ was the Messiah. And he said, and they will deceive the many. So the white horse in the book of Revelation depicts false religion, religious deception, by a power which claims to speak on behalf of Christ, but which deceives the many. And then Christ said that after that you will hear of wars and rumors of wars. And so sure enough, you have of course a second horse, a red horse, depicting war. And then Christ talked about pestilence, and he talked about famine. And actually famine first and then pestilence. And so the last two horses in the book of Revelation then depict famine and pestilence, the black horse and the pale horse. And right after that, Jesus Christ said, there will be great tribulation. And that is also explained in the book of Revelation. And it talks about martyrs for Christ. Now again, you might have heard about the Great Tribulation, but do you know what it means and who is it directed against? Revelation tells us that it is directed against God's people. There will a martyrdom coming, terribly and brutally enforced by a certain power we'll talk about in a moment. But the Great Tribulation is also directed against the nations of Israel and Judah, the modern nations, the descendants of the ancient houses of Israel and Judah. Now, most people perhaps know that the house of Judah depicts the Jews, but they have no clue as to who or what the house of Israel is today. Because the house of Israel is not Jewish, has nothing to do with the Jews. You see, the Jews, or Judah, was just one tribe out of many at the time when the house of Israel and the house of Judah were in existence. And so in order to ascertain against what nations today the Great Tribulation will foremost be directed, you need to know where the descendants of the house of Israel can be found today. And then Christ said that after the Great Tribulation there will be heavenly signs. And they are also described in the book of Revelation. They are described in the book of Joel. They are described in many other places in the Bible. And it will talk about meteorites and asteroids and other terrible things coming down from heaven on this earth and creating all kinds of havoc on this earth. And after that, the great day of the Lord is introduced, as for instance the book of Joel talks about, and as of course the book of Revelation talks about. And many people don't know what that day is. They think perhaps it's Sunday. Well, the day of the Lord has nothing to do with Sunday when it comes to biblical terminology. It is a prophetic time span which designates a time when God is going to start to directly intervene in human affairs. You see, most people today think that this is kind of God's world and that God is in charge and that God is ruling this earth, and nothing could be further from the truth. God isn't ruling this earth at all. He has given man the chance to rule himself for a certain period of time, and man has totally shown his absolute incapability and incapacity to do so. And so God will intervene. And when that time starts, it's called the day of the Lord, and it will culminate in the return of Jesus Christ. All of that is described in the book of Revelation and in many other places. Now, back to the Great Tribulation. We also are told who actually, from a human standpoint, is the power which actually brings that Great Tribulation into existence. And so in the book of Revelation, in the 13th chapter, John saw a peculiar looking beast coming out of the sea. And that beast had 7 heads and 10 horns. And it looked like a bear and a lion and a leopard. What does that beast designate? Can we know? Yes, we can know, but only if we look at other scriptures in the Bible. In this case, we have to go to the book of Daniel. Because you see, in the book of Daniel, the prophet Daniel saw several beasts in a vision coming out of the sea. But he saw separate beasts. One looked like a bear. One looked like a lion. One looked like a leopard and had 4 heads. And then there was a 4th beast. And so in the book of Daniel, we are told that these beasts signify empires. The Babylonian Empire, the Greco-Macedonian Empire, the Medo-Persian Empire, and finally the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire following the Greco-Macedonian Empire, which is depicted as a leopard with 4 heads, because after Alexander the Great died, his 4 generals took over the empire. But when John saw the beast, all these 4 beasts were pretty much put together in the one, because at that time only the Roman Empire existed. But even the Roman Empire wouldn't go under, because we read in the book of Revelation in the 13th chapter that one of the heads, the head of the Roman Empire, received a deadly wound. But that deadly wound was healed. And that happened under Justinian, when he brought about a revival of the Roman Empire by putting the Eastern Roman Empire and the Western Roman Empire back together. And then it said the world marveled at that revival, but it wouldn't be the only revival. Other revivals would follow. But now, it would be a little bit different, because now the Roman Empire, which was a strictly military and economic power, would become also a religious power. And in history, you find that after Justinian, references were made to the Holy Roman Empire, because a religious power was involved. When Charlemagne was crowned emperor in 800 AD in the German city of Aachen by the Pope, he became the emperor of the Holy Roman Empire. And later Otto the Great would be crowned by the Pope, and he became the emperor of the Holy Roman Empire of the German nation. And then there were other revivals under Mussolini and Hitler, under Napoleon. And we see the final and last revival occurring in front of our eyes right now in Europe. And that is depicted, for instance, in the book of Revelation in the 17th chapter, where you find that there are 10 kings who will give their power and their authority to the beast. And now the beast, of course, not only depicts a system, the revived Roman Empire, it also refers to an individual. the one who is actually representing the Roman Empire when it is finally revived, a military and political leader. And those 10 kings will be giving their power and authority to that beast. Now, he's sometimes referred to as Antichrist in certain circles, but the book of Revelation never uses that term. It specifically talks about the beast. But other scriptures tell us who that beast is. For instance, in the book of Daniel, he is identified as a king of the north. And in other places in the book of Isaiah, he is identified as a king of Assyria. And in order to understand who Assyria is today, of course, you need to know where that country can be found. So then you will also know who the final leader of the revived Roman Empire will be, insofar as at least where his descendancy comes from. Now, the woman riding the beast, as this picture is being shown to us in the book of Revelation, the 17th chapter, is another mystery to most people. But the book of Revelation identifies the woman as Babylon, Babylon the mystery. And of course, it is also identified as a city which is built on 7 hills. Now, I went to the internet just for the fun of it to see what people will tell me about who they think that city is, and the confusion is just incredible. But it should be rather obvious what religious city is built on 7 hills, specifically what religious power has been going hand in hand with the Roman Empire all along, those revived Roman empires, I should say. And then we hear about the mark of the beast, and we hear about 666, and people have no idea and no clue as to what all of these mean. You see, the mark of the beast has been around for a long time. It has to do with the ability or the inability to buy and to sell. But at the same time, when the final revival of the Roman Empire occurs in Europe, as we are seeing it coming together right now, that mark of the beast will be mightily and brutally enforced again, and is directed against God's people. And God's people are told not to accept that mark of the beast. Now, of course, you need to know what it is. You need to know what all of that means. And that is why I have an important announcement for you right now. We have prepared 2 special booklets which explain all these symbols which I have alluded to today. And these booklets are called The Great Tribulation and the Day of the Lord and Europe in Prophecy. The Great Tribulation and the Day of the Lord and Europe in Prophecy. One of the booklets includes a chart telling you exactly from a historical standpoint and a prophetic standpoint what is going to happen. You cannot be without that vital information because, as I said, unless you understand the book of Revelation in light of other biblical scriptures, you will have no clue as to what it all means. But it is a prophecy for us today because we are facing the immediate return of Jesus Christ, perhaps in a few years from now. So you need to know. Now, you might be indifferent about it, you might not care about it, and then you will not ask for those booklets. But if you really do want to know, if you really do care as to what God tells you, what is going to happen very soon, then you will either download those booklets from our websites, or you will ask for hard copies. These booklets are absolutely free, there is no request for money, and so please order those booklets today. Thank you very much for watching. Until next time. This is Norbert Link for the Standing Watch program.